Well, welcome. We're talking today with BRC Imagination Arts Chairman Bob Rogers. And along with us is Christian Rogers. You're the department head at IUPUI for themed entertainment.
Yes. Yeah. And we're really excited to have Bob with us here today.
And I am Nathan Naversen, founder of themeattraction.com. But we're going to talk today about really your wisdom that you have for us for the next generation, those folks who are in programs who are trying to find their place in the themed entertainment business. And I'm wondering if you could maybe give some of your thoughts right off the bat in terms of what you're seeing in the industry happening right now.
Well, my first thought right after the bat is the irony of going to someone who got their start or their inflection point back in the 1970s and asking them for advice that might be useful today and tomorrow. There's a little bit of irony in that. And what could this old guy possibly know about it? On the other hand, I've watched a lot of younger people assailing our company and others trying to get started and doing some things right, doing some things that they will later correct. So that was my first thought, is that what do I know? I literally, my first job in this industry was in 1968. I was a magician in the magic shop at Disneyland in California. That's before there was a Disney World. That's the one in California. So anyway, so that goes back quite a ways. What is that now? 53 and a half years. Quite a ways back. So what is it that I've sort of learned about that? One thing there's a quote in our lobby by Thoreau. It says, "Do not tell me what is old. Do not tell me what is new. Tell me what is never old." So the first thing that's never old is asking an achiever in themed entertainment or showbiz or films how they got into the business. I was president at UCLA when the producer and director Bob Wise, who did Sound of Music and the original West Side Story and a whole bunch of other things, was being asked how to break in. And he was giving these vague answers. And finally, one of the students asked, "Well, how did you break in?" And his first words out of his mouth were the same thought that starts almost every answer from an achiever. He said, "Well, I'll tell you how I got in, but I don't know that it's going to do you any good because I got in on a fluke." Well, that's the big secret, is that everybody gets in on a fluke. Now, you may be doing, this or that bit of work sort of in your industry, but the inflection point, the thing that causes your career to really take off, is almost always a fluke. And at first glance, you say to yourself, well, what good is this information? What you're really telling me is that I'm supposed to be everywhere at once. And that, in fact, is the clue. You need to be everywhere at once, all the time. And how on earth do you do that? And we can talk about that if you want, because that's really one of the real keys to getting in. And it's stuff that your mother and grandmother told you to do. It's staying in touch with people. It's shamelessly networking. If you're mainly thinking this is good advice we're looking for advice for people that are currently in college or currently in high school or currently just out of college, or that really scary period, that last 6 months of college, when the kids go, "Holy doodle, I'm just about done with the free ride that my parents and the university have given me. I have no bloody clue what to do after I sober up from the last graduation party. What do I do then?" And they really have not prepared themselves for it. They wake up at the last minute and goes, "Oh my God, what's this change? life that's going to come over me. How do I operate? And for them, right when you're in high school, you need to start networking. You need to start meeting people in the industry if you can. Your parents may have a friend of a friend, and just be shameless going after that and collect them. And the other real good, strong advice is while you're in college, network with your classmates. Right now, none of those classmates are in any position to give you a job. In fact, some of them look very, very unlikely to be able to ever give anybody a job. But you'd be surprised where some of them end up 10 years from today. So, one of them will be head of a major studio. Another one will be in federal prison. They just go all kinds of directions, and stay in touch. You just never know. So that's the first thing, just network shamelessly. And we can talk about how to network, but that's the first thing. Comments, questions so far?
Well, I mean, that actually happened to me. I helped a guy get an internship at Universal Creative years ago. And I checked in with him 9 months later. He says, hey, they're hiring on Universal Studio Shanghai. Send your resume over today. And the next day I had a job. and because they needed people, and they needed people with some experience. And I had that. And it was kind of right place at the right time. But it was because I did exactly inadvertently what you had told me to do. I just checked in. He says, hey, are you still looking for something? I said, yeah. He said, oh, well, they're hiring right now. So call this guy. And it worked. 10-minute interview.
Yeah, stay in touch. People in real estate talk about minding their farm, meaning their neighborhood that they specialize in, where they know everything. They've got to know everything that's going on in that neighborhood. Who's thinking of leaving? Who's looking for a friend is going to be moving near, and they need to have everything about what's going on in the housing of their territory or their farm, and they need to go back around and check in with people on a regular basis. What's the interval? Maybe it's you want to take every single person that's in your network and find a reason to check in with them every 3 or 4 months, And you also need to have a reason. You need to have some news. And if it's a colleague on your same level, you can be frank about, well, I'm looking for work here. I'm doing this, I'm doing that. I had a little success doing this. Have you tried that? You share a secret, but come up with some reason, some bit of news, reason to be in touch so that you refresh your memory. Those of us my age remember a guy on the Ed Sullivan Show that put plates on sticks, and he would spin these sticks spin the plates on the sticks, and he would see how many he could get going. And he would, as he put one more up, the original one would start slowing down and about to fall. So he'd have to go back and refresh and whatnot. And then pretty soon it would wind down again, and he'd have to go back and give each stick a refreshing spin up. And that's very much like your network. You need to refresh the memory, give them a fresh little thing that you've dropped in, and it starts out, there's 5 people in your network. It's not too hard to come up with something to say to each of them once every 3 or 4 months. Okay, when we get up to 250, that's a little bit different. Another huge clue, and everybody under 35 hates this. I didn't say you'd like it, I just said it would work. Handwritten notes. Oh my God, that's like my great grandmother used to say, that I should sit down after Christmas and write handwritten notes to all the relatives that sent me presents. Well, you can't cut and paste a handwritten note. So right away, it says you cared. It says you care about them enough that you actually wrote something out, as archaic as that is. And as the people that you're trying to reach get older, they start to, sad to say, they start to turn into their parents, and then gradually into their grandparents. And they actually appreciate and understand that handwritten note differently than someone the age of one of your students would think of it. And the handwritten note is, it says you cared. And so now you got 250 of those to put out once a quarter. Okay, that's a commitment, but this is what's going to get you someplace. That's it's that old saw where they say it's not what you know, it's who you know. Well, actually, it's both. It is what you know, but it's who you know that kind of gets you the opportunity to show what you know. So that's the first rule is network, and work that farm. Be in touch with everybody.
Bob, could you talk a little bit about how you approach the network? Because I know a lot of students, they're thinking, I need an internship. So they're automatically asking right up front, well, do you have any internships? And I know a lot of people, they don't naturally just have internships. And so how do you approach that network or approach that individual?
Oh, that's easy. That's easy. Never ask for a job. Never ask for money. Never ask for an internship. People in an advanced position, and I get this all the time, they would just love to have jobs to give out to every deserving young person they see, because we see a lot of them. We see a lot of people, and every kid has a compelling story, and every kid has some obvious talent, and you'd like to nurture them all, but you can't. You don't have that. It's not too many people know this, but Abraham Lincoln was similarly always besieged by job seekers, to the point where, it was just very demoralizing. He hated seeing people. But he came back from Gettysburg after giving his address, which with a touch of cholera. He survived. And his grim quote was, "At last I have something I can give to everyone." And I feel for him, because I would love to have jobs for everybody. So don't ask for an internship. Don't ask for a job. Don't ask for money. Ask for advice. Ask for advice. The other thing, kids, I say kids, these are young adults. Some of them are in their, mid-20s. But I'm sorry, I'm 72. They all look like kids to me. And they think of themselves as fully formed adults, and their educational credentials say they are. But they're, in the greater scheme of things, they're just beginners. They really don't know what they're doing. They know how to do school, and that's important, but they don't necessarily know how to fit into an organization in this business, et cetera, et cetera. But if they approach it and say, look, I'm kind of lost, I kind of don't know how to get started here, even when they do, because it won't be their first rodeo. Maybe they've been out on several of these things and they've already got quite a few clues. But if they approach you and say, I'm really kind of lost, I kind of don't know where, could you just give me, can I just get 30 seconds? I need some advice as to how to get started. You'd be astonished who will give you advice, because you're not putting me in a position where I have to say, no, I don't have a job for you. I don't have an internship for you. So always ask for advice. You may pick up the phone and call somebody else. They may give you a name. They may listen to what you're saying and you know what you really need to do? You need to call, what you want to do is you want to create audio animatronics. We don't make audio animatronics here, but the person you need to call or be in touch with is Garner Holt. Let me give you his phone number, and give me a day. I'll call him and let him know that you'll be calling him.
Yeah.
They may do that. People, it doesn't cost me anything. And everybody in senior leadership in this or any industry was helped by people at a time in their lives when they didn't deserve the help. When I was 29, I was producing educational films. The biggest budget educational film I had ever produced was $50,000. That was a lot of money in 1979 for an educational film. I landed a job developing films for Walt Disney Imagineering as a gift. It was a fluke. And then after pitching a whole bunch of terrible ideas, Marty Sklar said on one of them that we pitched about a sort of a tourist tour of France, well, I guess you'll have to go make the film. And I found myself on an airplane headed to a continent I'd never been on, to a country where I did not speak the language, to head a film crew, the culture of which filmmaking in Europe I did not understand, in a currency I'd never used, and in charge of $2.7 million. And in a remote location where Imagineering really didn't have very many people available to supervise what the hell we were doing on a day-to-day basis. Marty had no reason whatsoever to trust me with that responsibility. And every person who's ever accomplished anything has had an experience like that, and they know that they kind of want to give back. They kind of want to help other people as they were themselves helped. So what you want to do is figure out, without ever asking for it, give them an opportunity to let that be their idea. Because if you get it to be their idea, then you can call them back and write them back. And when you're writing your little note, you can say, you know, I think this was the biggest opportunity of my life and you gave it to me. Anything that happens from now on, you're going to be the reason that I got started. And if you write them that, then they're going to feel real good about themselves. And they're also going to feel a little bit paternalistic, aren't they? Like you gave them credit for their success or for your success. And that means that they're sort of starting to think of you as their protege. And you water that plant. Every chance you get, you write them back with, I had another success over here, and it all goes back to that thing you did for me a year ago. I just can't thank you enough. I was thinking about you again today. And if you can, that's called a mentor. You want to take the people that you meet and a certain classification of them, you want to turn them into mentors. I had some great mentors. My mentors included Buzz Price, Marty Sklar, Don Iwerks, and several others. It all started with just asking for advice as to how to go about doing things and how to get started. And also them at one point trusting me with a responsibility that I had not earned. And turn your contacts into mentors, and then nurture that and give them credit. Let each one think that they alone are responsible for your career.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. Now, Christian, before we got on, had made the point of, with your workout in France, you were on an island, or on a continent, I guess, but you were working autonomously. So, but there's an issue where a student may think that when I get out into the world that I'm going to be also working autonomously. So can you speak to that?
Creative freedom.
What's the reality of working on a team, especially when you're new, but really at any point in your career?
Well, sure. Let me talk about that scary. I've been told not to tell the story I'm about to tell you. I've been told that it's too demoralizing to young people. They don't like hearing this, but it's what they need to hear, not what they want to hear. And they need to start hearing it somewhere in early college, if not sooner. And that's this. It's all about that change of life that happens on graduation. during your entire school experience, which is everything you've experienced in your life. It's always been this way. Won't it always be this way? You are the seed. You are the hope for the future. Everything and everyone is about nurturing you, bringing you along, bringing out what's special and unique about you, helping you to express yourself, helping you to put your ideas out for the world to appreciate. And then you graduate, and you are no longer the seed, you are now the vending machine. There is a patron who's putting money in the machine and expects the product that they want. They could give a shit about your dreams. They really don't care. They've got their problems that they're trying to solve, and they put the money in the machine. And if the machine doesn't give them the product that they expected or wanted, then they're going to kick the machine a couple of times, trying to get it to give the product they need. And after a while, they'll quit patronizing it. And that is a harsh description of the change. It's no longer about you. It's now about whoever you're working for or whatever team you're working for and what it is that they need. We say to some of our young people, if you can make your dreams come true, you will find work. If you can make other people's dreams come true, you will be constantly working. So the first order of business when you do get that internship or that opportunity is don't expect everybody to be nurturing you or coming around and encouraging you. Try to figure out what it is that the team is trying to get done. What are the boss's measures of success? What is the boss trying to get done? And how do you become indispensable in that effort? How do you become, it's also useful to become a master of one thing and a jack of all others. We have an endearing term that we put on people. In fact, one of our people at one point even had this on his business card, Swiss Army knife. That was his title. Can you be a Swiss Army knife? Can you be a master of one thing, but you're also this Swiss Army knife that can do a little bit of a heck of a lot of other things? That's how you become, that's one of the ways you become indispensable.
Is it?
So you want to, but it's about fitting into that organization and getting that organization or that team where the team is trying to go. It's not about you anymore.
We have this question from some kids that we were talking to at IAPA. Is it safe to say that the one skill gets you in the door, and then all of the skills, the jack of all trades, the Swiss Army knife, that's what keeps you or makes you valuable? That's
a great way of putting it. That's a great way of putting it. It's the same thing said a different way, but it's absolutely true. You should know. Now, there are some organizations, the larger organizations, some of them don't value that. It is a mistake to generalize about any organization or team, but as a general rule, Disney tends to put you in a pigeonhole. You are in charge of pigeonhole number 34861. And never mind what's going on in pigeonhole 34862. That's none of your business. In a smaller organization, which is where the vast majority of the jobs are, you're kind of help each other out constantly. My image of a great team comes from thinking about a game of pickup basketball. You're in a park someplace, and there's a bunch of people playing basketball, and they four guys that are sitting around kind of would like to play, and there's four guys on the court playing 2-on-2. And the four guys on the court say, "Hey, you want to play? Let's do 4-on-4." Okay, well, I've never played basketball on the same team with any of these other three guys. So we all get out there and we start playing basketball, and you figure out real quick, oh, the tall guy, yeah, he's tall, but he can't make a basket from underneath the hoop to save his life. but he can hit them from outside. And this short guy, he's real fast. So you can feed him on the outside. He'll get in and he'll score the basket. You figure it out. So you all start sort of shifting what you're doing and where you're playing to sort of complement what the others are doing. You see something that's not getting done and you kind of fill in there. To a great extent, a great team on any project kind of does a little bit of that. And they're not afraid to, I guess I would say, cross union lines, you know, I mean, like, you know, can the camera department pick up a Makita and help the set guys get that flat into place? You know, it's like, that's the guy. Think of this story. It'll help you. You decide you're going to visit your friend is shooting a feature film and he's producing, and he's invited you on the set. So you go to the set and you slip into the back of the sound stage and you try not to bother anybody because you can see through the equipment over in the other side, the well-lit area. The director is running some lines with the cast and they're working out some camera blocking, and you're just standing at the back. And there are these three guys right in your area, and they're all coiling up cables. They're all coiling cables. And you ask the first guy, what are you doing? And he says, I'm coiling cables. And you ask the second guy, hey, what are you doing? He says, I'm making $57.60 an hour. And he asked the third guy, hey, what are you doing? He says, we're making a movie. Which one do you want on your team? You want the one that feels they're part of the whole thing and is probably willing to fill in and do whatever needs to be done to advance what the team is trying to do. That's the person you want to be once you get in.
Well, and you know, Bob, to that point, because you're hitting on a couple of things here, shifting to the perspective of you as the employer, right? You're getting introduced to this student, or you're meeting this student for the first time, who is, you know, wanting to network with you, seek your mentorship. What type of emotional intelligences or skills are you wanting to see in them that really piques your interest? I mean, if you had to choose between the person who comes in and says, I'm a really good animator and here's my strong portfolio, or I'm a camera operator, here's my resume, and the person who has that plus something. Obviously, it seems like the ability to work and interact with other people, be a part of that team and feel like they're a part of that team. What else do you see? Are you looking for?
Don't come in telling me how great you are. Come in saying you just getting started. You don't know what to do next. Could you look at my reel and tell me what it's missing? Where do I need to get stronger? Teachable is more important than knowledgeable.
Yeah.
Don't tell me, let me find out your accomplishments. I'll decide whether they're accomplishments or not. What you need to do is signal to me that you can learn, because a lot of some kids come into a first job situation and they believe, and I realize, of course, we have a professor present here who makes his living on the assumption that college prepares you for life, and it does.
I don't always agree with that, by the way.
It does. But that next step is you've got to keep learning. In your 20s, you're going to continue to keep learning. Your 30s, you're going to continue to keep learning. I'm still learning stuff. I'm in my 70s. You will never be the master of this thing. You will always be learning. But the main thing is you want somebody who is not going to come in and try to tell everybody how smart they are and how knowledgeable they are and how you ought to listen to me. You want at least people who will initially be very open to redirection. We've got a guy, a writer that here that I love working with. I love working with him. And I would never say this to him, but if I did, if I said, Rich, this thing you wrote was the biggest piece of garbage it has no beginning, middle, or end. It's just this ramble of train wreck of flavor words meaning nothing. And I think it's probably one of the worst things you've ever written. Now, how are most writers going to react to that, especially if they worked hard on it? Well, what Rich is going to do is Rich is going to say, well, gosh, what do you want to do to it next? What would you like me to try next? No ego whatsoever. We love working with this guy. He's constantly open to a direction or a redirection. He'll try anything. And that's who you want to hire, is because you know that they don't know much. They know that they know a lot because of all the things they've covered in college and all the things that the life experiences they've had. Maybe they've volunteered to do, maybe they've made films on the side for years. Maybe they've done, local theater for years. But if they come in thinking they know it all, that's going to be a problem. If they come in thinking, oh boy, now I finally get to learn the real stuff, that's an attitude that will resonate. Because that says this person is going to be teachable, moldable. They're not going to be a problem. Does that help?
No, that's definitely helpful. And I remember when I talked to you a few weeks ago, I mentioned this idea of team conflict, and you said, well, we don't have it. And so you said something to that effect. And so I'm curious as to what type of skills it sounds like obviously the skills you mentioned contribute to that culture that you've created at BRC. Is there anything else that you would say helps that?
Well, I wouldn't say that you never have conflict, but what I would say is that you've got a hopefully your model. I like to think of Douglas MacArthur's staff in the Second World War. They would sit around a table saying, we need to take this island, and how are we going to do it? We can hit this beach, we can hit that beach, we can do airstrikes here, we can do this, we can do that. What's the right sequence? And his staff of about 10 people would sit there and they would have a free-for-all discussion and say, oh no, you're nuts, you can't go in on that beach because of the cliffs and the this, that, and the thing, and the airstrikes, and the enemy's too dug in over there, and blah, blah, blah. And that's what, and this beach is impossible because of the fact that it's got a long, shallow area. So your landing craft would have to let the people out in 5 feet of water, and they'd have to struggle in from there. That cannot, blah, blah, blah. And they all participate, and they all, including the general, participate, suggest ideas, criticize each other's ideas mercilessly. And then at some point, the general decides. And he turns and says, Larry, you're the one that we said we should absolutely not hit the North Beach. You seem to understand the problem, so you're in charge of it. And Larry goes, yes, sir. And now we're going to do it. So you do want a healthy exchange of ideas. And sometimes those go on a little bit too long, but the idea that you're all ultimately on one team trying to do one great project that's going to have great impact on your audience, that unifying idea, like the game of pickup basketball, it's just we accommodate each other because we have a common goal. And if you choose the right people to be on that team, they can have some of those conflicts without them ever really turning highly personal. And that's the difference. Yeah, you're always going to have differences of opinion. If you don't have differences of opinion, then somebody in the room was unnecessary.
A lot of this reminds me of how a blue sky session might play out. I was taught early on, when you're in blue sky, you're not allowed to say no, because it's almost like improv. It kills the conversation. So exactly. Everyone, right? And so when there's a bad idea, everyone's quiet. But when there's a good idea, everyone shout, says, "Oh, that's great," but what it does is it gives you the freedom to talk out without being
Sure,
criticized.
there are stories in the literature about Walt Disney that the engineers learned never to say that can't be done or that's impossible. They learned to say that could be difficult because Buzz Price said it very well. Just always phrase it yes if, never no because. That project, I'm sorry, you cannot put a $1 billion theme park in Barstow. It'll die there. Instead, well, yes, you could put a $1 billion theme park in Barstow if you built $1 trillion worth of rail travel, rapid rail between blah, 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 and grew the population immediately surrounding to so-and-so. You could put impossible conditions on it, but always say yes if. By the way, improv is a really great experience for anybody in this business. If you have stood up in front of a group of college students without a script and without a plan and announced to them that we will now make you laugh, and they're your peers. If you can actually do that, you will never be intimidated by making any presentation in your life. And that'll give your presentations a sort of a bit of swagger that you can't get any other way. Improv is one more great thing you can do to prepare yourself for this business. But yeah, yes if, as Buzz would say, yes if.
Yes if. One of the things we talk about is that we are storytellers. That really started from Disney way back. And so everyone says, well, I'm a storyteller. How do you as a young professional learn the art of storytelling?
I don't think we know what story is in our business. I know that we started talking about story at BRC back about 20 or 25 years ago. And way that others in the business immediately caught on, oh yeah, this is important. And they learned the S word and they put the word story in everything they said. Story, 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 story. Now, if you buy our water pump gaskets, that'll give your water park a really good story. What? They had no idea what a story was. The architect always thinks the building tells a story. One of my good friends who's an architect, a genius, but he had there's this architect language of architect speak that goes like this. It says, well, this is a building, because this is a building for NASA, it is about humankind reaching to the heavens. So I want to reach up and pull the heavens down into the building. I want people to look at the building and we want to see a cascade, a living cascade of clouds and stars and the moon and the winds as they cascade across the face of the building, telling a story of humankind reaching to the heavens. Clive, you mean the front windows are all going to be mirror glass? Yes, that's right.
Yeah.
He thinks he's telling a story. He's not. He's putting a mirror finish on the front of the building. They all think they're doing story, but what is story really? The best advice I can give anybody who thinks that they're doing story in our business is make people care. That's the first rule of story at Pixar, on one of the many different sets of story rules that Pixar has put out. Make me care. Make me care. Why do I care? Why do I give it? I've got to care about what happens next. And sometimes in our industry, that all by itself is almost enough. You don't know, you aren't going to do the hero's journey or the writer's journey, if you're familiar with that book, which is like, the 14 steps
Yeah.
come out of Joseph Campbell. You're not going to do that in a 3.5-minute ride. So it's, I don't know that we understand story and have a nice, neat definition other than make me care, make me care. Sometimes there's actually story lurking where you least suspect it. An ordinary iron ride coaster has a story. It does. And it's a story that we bring to it. Come on, Dad, you said you'd ride the roller coasters with us. No, Daddy doesn't like the roller coasters. Why don't you kids go ahead and ride? Come on, Daddy. We're gonna all be grown up and we're gonna be off at college. And you're gonna miss us and you're gonna wish you'd had these good times with us. You need to ride the roller coaster. No, Daddy really doesn't like that. And a few minutes later, holy shit, how did you talk me into this? And then walking away, ha ha, Daddy's got sick. Ha ha. Hey, Daddy, let's ride another one. No. Daddy rode that one. No more. There's a story there, but the audience comes in and completes it sometimes. But one way or another, you got to make people care, give somebody, the roller coaster all by itself, its story is for a young person is, are you up to this challenge? Life is full of scary stuff. Can you subject yourself to the illusion of a near-death experience? Are you brave enough to do that? I want to do another one. But sometimes story is a little bit thin. Sometimes it's better. And then of course there are much more elaborate stories, like the ones that we do from a lot of our presentations and shows. But it starts with make me care about the outcome.
Well, and to that end, I listened to some of your podcast with Theme Park Insider, and it's almost like there's an element of research that's done, right? So it's like you're not coming up with the story that's in your own head. It's not always people sitting around a room and coming up with that storyline, right? It's going finding, right? It's going and finding.
Oh, and I'll give you a very good example of that. The model in a lot of people's heads, a lot of young people's heads, comes from the meritocracy that we think goes on in Hollywood or in book publishing, where somebody works alone, working on this great story idea, either a novel or a screenplay, and they go out to a studio and they pitch it, and the studio says, oh my God, this is perfect. And we need a vehicle for Tom Hanks. This is great. We're going to buy this and we're going to hire you to polish it up the script. And the young person says, well, no, actually, I won't do that. I won't sell you the script unless I'm directing it. And the studio reluctantly agrees to do this. And so now this launches the person's career. That's a story. That's a fantasy. That doesn't happen in Hollywood, but that's the pattern that people bring to sometimes our industry. And I can think of a few extremely rare examples where that's happened, where somebody comes in with a story and the powers like it and build it. But that is really, 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 really rare. What happens in our world again and again and again is, once again, if you can make your dreams come true, you will find work. But if you can make other people's dreams come true, you will be constantly working. You encounter a client has a problem or a challenge. I really want to do XYZ. I'd like to accomplish this, but I don't know how. You've got to solve their problem. And here, I'll give you a huge clue about this. When we did the script for Mystery Lodge, which was a show based on We had done a thing for a World's Fair called Spirit Lodge. It was a big hit at a World's Fair about transportation, and its theme was transportation. When we adapted that for to play at Knott's Berry Farm, the problem was it was going to go into Ghost Town. And so a theme of the future of of transportation. Hang on a second. No, thanks. Thing about transportation is it wasn't going to work in Ghost Town. So we had to come up with a different storyline. So what we did was we matched what was inherent in our subject that we had together with what was inherent in the audience already. It was already there. You're looking for something that's already in both. Those of your students who've studied a little bit of mathematics will understand a Venn diagram, the two circles that very slightly intersect, very slightly. You're looking for that thing that is resident and authentic to both. And so we went out and we sat with people at Knott's Berry Farm. We went out and we mingled with their people. We read all their statistics of who their audience was, all of the demographics. But then we would go out and we stood in line for rides that we did not intend to ride. We struck up conversations. There's a restaurant called, I think it's called the Fireman's Brigade, where they have picnic benches where they combine families. We would just sit there drinking Coca-Cola and strike up conversation with whoever was sitting there. So who are you with? Are you with your grandma today? That's great. And what are you doing? What do you want to, whereabouts you're from? Just kind of get to know them as people, see what they were about. And one of the things we noticed was that unlike the audiences at Six Flags which was largely either dating couples or they were one family unit, that the audiences at Knott's Berry Farm were very frequently 3 generations and on rare occasion 4. You'd get great-grandmother being pushed in a wheelchair right next to great-granddaughter being pushed in a stroller. They were just a little different. And they were really there at Knott's rather than at Disney because they wanted to be together. There's something about Disney that tends to separate families based on different energy levels and different interests and that desperate need to try to get your money's worth by running to all of the favorite rides, which grandfather doesn't run quite like he used to. And Knott's just much more of a leisure pace to it. So we themed the storyline around a person who is having an encounter. There's a native North American who's having an encounter with the owl of death, which in his culture means your time to die has come. And he sort of shrugs that off, says, yeah, but even so that's just a silly superstition. But even so, that owl got me thinking, and he thinks back over his whole life and decides ultimately that the best parts of his life were the parts that he spent with the people he loved, with his family, with his children, with his grandchildren. Guess what everybody in our audience is doing today? Yeah. You just validated their day. You just made them feel great. So you devise a story that's going to bring the two together. Another example would be the Selig experience that we did. Bud Selig was the head of the baseball, and he was responsible, among other things, for the fact that we didn't have the World Series one year during the baseball strike. He also was very associated with the Brewers, and when he retired from as commissioner of baseball, the Brewers wanted to do a tribute to him because he was really one of the big founders that created the Milwaukee Brewers. And how are we going to find something in common between the Brewers fans and this billionaire who made a hell of a lot of money, partly at least because the state put up the money for this incredible stadium, et cetera, and gave him all kinds of tax breaks, et cetera. What are we going to find in common? Well, just kept looking and looking and looking. And his initial interest in baseball started when his mother took him to games. And he had this nostalgic recollection of the falling in love with baseball because of that experience of going with his mother. She endowed him with her love of baseball. Once again, guess what almost everyone in our audience is doing today? If they don't have a young person with them, and they aren't doing it right now, then that's how they themselves were introduced to it originally. It's this immediate tie between the heart of the audience and the heart of the subject. Build your subject, build your story around that, rather than, you know, this 3-act play or the 14 steps of the writer's journey, or the, you know, the Joseph Campbell thing. Too complex, too complex. It's not a 2-hour play. It's you've got only a few minutes to put something across, and it starts with make me care, find out why I care, put that in your show, and give me something to think about that's based on something I care about already.
Yeah, and that at least going back to Spirit Lodge, he sort of shrugs off the owl of death, and then at the end he contemplates his life and the meaning of it, and he says something like, life will always be full of joy and wonder. And then lights go out, lights come back on, he's no longer there, but his cane is there for just a minute, and then
Oh no, it's better.
falls.
It's better than that. He
Oh.
slowly vanishes. He dissolves away. He becomes transparent, and then he's altogether gone, but the cane in his hand is still there, and it falls over. By the way, that's about the real death. Very unusual in a theme park. It's not about the cartoon death of the Haunted Mansion or the fake death of the near-death experience that you get at roller coasters. This is about the real death. And normally you only think about those things and talk about those things when you are in church or in temple or synagogue. You leave that there. It very unusual and very, at the time, daring to do that. And yet it comes across with great heart and touches people.
Yeah,
That show is gone, by the way. It had a 25-year run, and it wrapped up. The technology got a little bit old, and they were unable to find the parts on eBay anymore. so that one rides off into history.
well, it lives on YouTube, at least for some of us. But well, okay, so let's talk about little change of subject. And I'm just getting back to what can be practical for students. And so could you tell me about some of the roles, the actual roles that you fill on your project that maybe someone could plug into?
Well, the first one is just helping everybody. You know, graphic design is one thing where sometimes people can, in effect, desktop publishing is an area where that might be a way to kind of sometimes it's art, but the thing is you want somebody who can do the style of art that you need for your proposals. It's no longer about, it's that change from finding your personal style to working in a house style.
Yeah.
That is, if you're thinking, you might want to say, okay, I'm going to take a look at the style of art in the proposals of the kinds of companies that I would like to work in. And starting in my freshman year in college, I'm going to start trying to figure out how to do that style. How will an architect tend to sometimes be a little bit more watercolory, a little bit more softer palette, whereas Somebody in Pure Theme Park will, oh yeah, Crimson Sky, that's a great idea.
Very saturated.
You know,
Right.
more saturated, more vivid. You know, can you do the, you know, can you do the kind of art that they need? Because they're not there to change their house style to match the thing that your professor said was your signature style. You want to conform to that, so you can move in that direction. Graphically, what do you, you know, a lot of times kids learn desktop publishing and graphics. The emphasis is on the composition of the page rather than the communication. You know, so to the student, the picture on the page is a block, and he's, you know, that he's composing with. No. If I'm the one putting the proposal to, you know, forward, the picture is the window. That's how I see the what you're trying to sell me or tell me. So I want the window bigger. I could give a darn about your compositional theory, et cetera. So graphic design for communication, those would be a couple of things that would be, companies like ours do a lot of proposals and not that many projects. And if you want to learn the business, you learn the mathematics of the business also. Arithmetic holds the industry together, not just budgets, but capacity, the metrics of cost per square foot. You know, learn the math of the business as well. Don't just learn the arts. That's that part of that. You know, be a jack of all trades. Be knowledgeable about that. And of course, the other thing is that the needs are changing all the time. The odds are you'll probably wind up, at least initially, doing working on proposals rather than necessarily on production of a project. Although production of a project is also an interesting, you know, that tends to be for the duration of a project, right? So in other words, it's got a finite beginning and a finite end. That's so you get in and then you're going to, but that's also a safer way sometimes for companies to hire you, because then you come in knowing they know they've got an end
You have
date,
an end date.
and without embarrassing anybody, they, you know, okay, great. Don't know where you're going next, but it's been lovely having you with us. Thank you very much. And or hey, could you stick around? I think we might have one more little thing for you to do. That's what that you might want that.
So
Yeah.
I'm curious. Sorry, Nick, were you gonna?
No, go ahead. Keep going.
I'm curious to not to, well, I would say for the person that you are looking at going, man, you know, I really think we'd like you to stick around. What is that thing that kind of tips your hat to, you know, is it some of those same skills that you mentioned earlier? That,
Yeah,
you know,
it's openness to learn, openness to taking direction. You know, you give somebody a direction and they come back with yes if rather than no because. That's or another one that's a real great marker, but this is kind of on another level up. I was told this about Jeffrey Katzenberg when we first started working with him, and I didn't believe it. They told me when Jeffrey gives you a note, you have three options. Option number 3, which is your least good option, is to say to Jeffrey, this is my film. I'm directing it. I'm going to make this call and I'm not going to use your note and I'm not going to do anything about it. Jeffrey doesn't like hearing that. You can get away with that maybe once, maybe twice on a project, but don't try it a third time. Your second best option is to do exactly what he says. Your best option is to come back and do something else that's different from what he suggested, but that does an even better job of solving the problem he was trying to solve. That's always your best option. I didn't believe it. I said, yeah, right. Come back with some other thing that, no. He gave a suggestion. He wants to see his idea up there. I was wrong. One of the things I really admire about Jeffrey Katzenberg was we put him to a severe test of that. He set us off to rewrite a film about how Disney animation gets made. And he had told us to use as our co-hosts, who was it? Never mind, I won't say, we didn't use them. It was like bizarre. And we came back with two completely off the wall different people. It was Robin Williams and Walter Cronkite. For those of your students, Walter Cronkite used to be the most respected man in America. He was the newscaster that 40% of America got all their news from. And those two as a pair, we came back, we never once heard mention of the two people that Jeffrey had suggested. Once he saw that, oh, okay. That's never said their names again. And that's, if you can understand, executives and leaders give notes because they see either problems or opportunities to make something a little better. And it's a bad idea to fight that. It's a good idea to go with it or come back and solve the problem they were trying to solve by doing something even better.
My goodness, that worked with Robin Williams.
We've got a couple of people in our group that do that, and it's just, they are astonishing to work with.
Are they filmmakers? Are they art directors? What is their role?
One of them that I'm thinking of right now is an effects animator who just listens deeply, never says anything, listens deeply, and comes back with, wow, that was pretty good. But then if you say, could we make this part a little different? Okay. It's really hard to find that level genius with the temperament that is willing to take new ideas and isn't full of themselves. That's hard to find that.
Yeah.
We've got some kids. This Christian uses, he's the head of the IUPUI computer graphics program, and so that's where some of the it's computer graphics technology, and that's where a lot of the kids are looking about how to put together a portfolio where they might best position themselves for a career in themed entertainment. Can you speak to that student in terms of what he might be doing in order to prepare himself? Well, notwithstanding everything we've already said.
Yeah, study the art that's being created by the company that you're trying to work for. What style do they work in? There's a lot of young people these days would like to be either art directing games or art directing Spider-Man movies. And we see a lot of art of the dystopian future and the warrior guys that are, all cladded up with, with armor, and they're partly robotic. And they look like there's something out of the final climactic, nearly the destruction of everything scene in either a war movie after the apocalypse, blah blah blah. Kind of depressing, and our work in themed entertainment doesn't call for a lot of that. So if you want to, if you're preparing for a work in the gaming industry, that's great, but don't bring your gaming industry portfolio to themed entertainment and expect a positive response. Another area that is just astonishingly absent. Can you do quick sketch of storyboards and other things where you're drawing quick sketches of people so that you can tell what they're thinking and feeling. A lot of people do backgrounds or settings, they can't do people. They're gonna Photoshop them in from, you might be able to get some work doing storyboard or concept development if you can you know what a Disney character model sheet is, where they'll have 20 drawings of Mickey. Here he is sad, here he is depressed, here he is curious, here he is laughing, here he is shocked, here he is scared. What are all those? Can you do that? Can you do something like that? Not necessarily with Mickey, but just draw people that are communicating what the feeling is of what's going on. That's something that we don't see enough of. But the main clue there is look at the kinds of companies that you would like to work for. Figure out what the style of art is. And by the way, that's a great way to ask for advice, is to go to one of the heads of the companies, call up one of the heads and say, I could really use some advice. I'm an artist. I'm studying, working hard. I would really appreciate it if somebody could take me through the styles that you use so that I could spend the next couple of years getting better at those. And so that I understood what you're doing, what you're looking for, etc. You're not asking for a job, you're asking for advice. That might be an interesting approach. But again, it's just you're crossing the line. You were the seed, now you're the vending machine. Be prepared to dish out what the customer wants to buy. If you're selling something that's different that the customer doesn't want, that can't use, then that's great. More power to you. All the best of luck with your career, but not here.
Right.
Yeah. Bob, this is, and I want to be respectful of everybody's time. This is kind of a shameless plug here in a way, but if I'm looking at an engineering student and I have the opportunity to consider, going to work for a car manufacturer or to go work in the themed entertainment industry, why choose the themed entertainment industry? I mean, what is it about the themed entertainment industry that drew you, and why should someone else choose it?
Well, in the first place, if they're asking that question, they should go into the car industry. The people who end up in themed entertainment or in entertainment are the people that have to be there. They've got to be there. It's in their soul. It's in their blood. It's not an option. Having said that, also, it's so much more fun. We've done a lot of work we've worked for Volkswagen, we've worked for Ford, we've worked for General Motors. I knew a guy at General Motors who was a wonderful designer, incredible designer. He had spent something like 25, 26 years at General Motors in design staff, and was yet to see a single line that he'd drawn go into production of a car.
Wow.
And that was a designer. Engineers, the variety that you get if you're in our line of work. I mean, I'm going to do, this is over a 40-year period, but we have worked with automobile designers. We've worked, not the people that write about automobile design or write books about automobile, but the people who do it. We have, when we were doing research about what it was like to stand on the moon because we were doing a lunar mural. We were across the table, not from people who wrote a book about it, not from people who studied it. We were across the table from Neil Armstrong, Buzz Aldrin, John Young, Gene Cernan. When we were doing Mystery Lodge and Spirit Lodge, we were sitting across the table, not from people at the Smithsonian who had the collections, or the people that wrote the books at the University of British Columbia, or any of that. We were across the table from the tribal dance master, the elected chief, the hereditary chief, the tribal carver, the tribal anthropologist, the people who actually were descended from the great chiefs that had, whose culture we were using. When we just finished up working on a thing, the Johnny Walker Princess Street, which just opened a couple months ago and is now probably the most ambitious and creative alcohol-related visitor center in the world. We were learning about whiskey. We were sitting across the table, not from the guy that writes about whiskey, not from the people who make the whiskey, not from the blenders who blend the whiskey and decide when it's Johnny Walker. We were sitting across the table from the guy who chose the people that were allowed to decide when it was Johnny Walker, a guy by the name of Beveridge, if you're ready for that. And he's explaining to us all how to taste for the subtle differences of the different single malt whiskeys that all go into the blend that is Johnny Walker. And then we were also doing some distillery experiences at some of those single malt distilleries. It's primary experiences. We get to do the most interesting things, and it's cars one day and whiskey the next. Hopefully not together.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
What do you say to
that's what's so cool. The variety.
Yeah. Well, and to that point, the type of students that I see, I will often say that I'm surprised I don't have a student walk in my class with Mickey Mouse ears on, or I'm surprised I don't see that. And actually, it has happened this past semester. I had a few students show up actually from the Magic Kingdom, so they show up with passion. So,
well, if you're in love with your job, if you love going to work, then you don't have to work.
Right.
You're waking up, and I'm the fool that driving to work will say, oh, thank God it's Monday. That's kind of weird, but if that's how you feel about going to work, then you have followed your bliss. You have achieved something wonderful if you really love what you do. And you're going to be doing it a long time. You might as well love what you do.
And you don't necessarily do it for the money. You do it for the love of
No, if we were doing it for the money, we'd be selling life insurance or something.
Right.
Right.
So much, you can make so much more money doing, arranging, mortgages for people, or selling life insurance, or this with the same amount, with half as much effort. But remember those three guys coiling cables?
It's worth it in the end.
Well, it doesn't matter, if you love what you do, and then that's a wonderful thing. You get to the end of your life and say, what did you do? And you might actually say, yeah, I wish I'd spent a few more days at the office. But that's, you might as well be doing something that you love.
When did you know? Were you you grew up in Southern California, I think, and spent your childhood at Disneyland. Is that where it happened? Was it at film school?
It sort of happened twice for me. One of the steps in the the 14 steps of the writer's journey, or the Joseph Campbell things, one of the important steps is refusal of the call. I was the magician in the magic shop at Disneyland. That was a great introduction to show business, because my job was to demonstrate the trick. That was the show part. And then while they were still amazed and dazed, drag them over to the cash register and sell them the trick. That was the business part, show business, right? But I arranged, because I was just curious, I arranged for my schedule to give me Saturday and Sunday off. Don't ask me how I did that on a summer schedule when I'm a temporary employee, but I got it. And then I would call in every Saturday and every Sunday and say, I'm fully qualified for any retail and trained for any retail position. I will come in and work on my day off for time and a half, because boy, I tell you, I was making $1.15 an hour. And that time and a half, that was real money.
Oh, yeah.
So I would come in, and as long as I was working any place in the park except the magic shop, and I could be in any retail location. Well, when I would turn in my magician's uniform, they never saw the magician's uniform in wardrobe. That was very rarely saw that. So they would frequently get confused and give me an operations uniform or something inappropriate. And I would say nothing, put that on and go out. And one day I helped people on and off the train all day. So I didn't show up where I was expected. And somebody that wasn't expecting me had a different, had an employee he didn't want or need. And I wasn't trained to help people on and off the train. So that was bad. I would also wander around in the backstage areas, because the Disneyland reminded me of a big model train set in a scale of 1 to 1. A model train set so big you could walk around in it. And I wondered things like, in the Pirates of the Caribbean, how did all the pirates sing in sync? Remember, this is 1968. We have not been to the moon yet. So I wandered in the back door one day, found a guy who was happy to entertain himself by explaining it to me. It was the world's largest combination cuckoo clock music box. It was electromechanical, for crying out loud. Where did the water all go on Pirates of the Caribbean? You know, it's the bottom level's full. The waterfalls are all going down on their way to the bottom level, but they're being pumped out of the bottom level up when they turn the pumps off at night. Why doesn't the bottom level flood? There were horse cars going up and down Main Street in those days, and the horse barn was out behind It's a Small World. How did the horses get through Fantasyland without leaving evidence of their passage? What does the shop look like where they maintain 19th century steam locomotives? How does somebody know how many hamburger buns they're going to need next Tuesday? Ooh, this was a good one. It's 1968. There are credit cards, but it's mostly cash. Where does the cash go at night? Think of all of the cash drawers. Every single cash register drawer has to be counted out, bagged up, sent to cash control, counted out to make sure that it matches what the receipt says that it should be. Then it has to be organized, new cash draws for change drawers for tomorrow. Have to be, and then you never see a Brinks truck pull up to Disneyland and leave. That was a question that I was smart enough not to ask out loud. To me, it was just fascinating. And when they found out what I was doing, because of course I was caught, when they found out what I was doing, they should have put me in management training. Instead, they stamped no rehire on my portfolio and told me that I would never, ever, ever again be allowed to work for any part of the company ever again. The guy explained that they had a new thing in the company called a computer, And that was a machine that if I went over to when they opened the upcoming park in Florida that they were thinking of opening, if I went there, they were going to type my name into this machine and it was going to say no rehire. So don't even bother trying. That was the first of 3 times that I was fired by Disney. And each time told I would never, ever work for any part of that organization ever again, 3 times. But they should have put me in training. So that was the first time I was called. That was the call, and I refused the call. I said, no, that's not what I want to do. I want to make films. I want to be Steven Spielberg. I want to go make feature films. So I was fascinated, but I ignored that part of me. And I went off and I made educational films, television commercials, made some good ones. And then found myself making films for Epcot before there was an Epcot, because we were hired to make the films that would open Epcot. And in the process of being around the designers and whatnot, I just kind of discovered, oh, this is what I was really good at. I'm not terribly good at writing television. I'm not fast enough. I'm not terribly good at writing features. I guess I'm not good enough or don't have the knack or don't know how to talk it. But this, I was put on this earth to do this. I'm good at it, and people like my ideas, and I kind of instinctively sort of know what to do. And so that was the second. That was the inflection point there. And as a result, I've never made a feature film. My original life dream that I had for the first kind of, like 12 years of my career, I never did that. Just stuck with this.
Well, the work you've done is fairly remarkable and amazing. And I can definitely see, yeah, you're right. They should have put you in management training, because there's that curiosity there. How does everything work?
Yeah, and it was everything. It wasn't just one thing. How does everything work? That's why one reason why I latched onto, early in my career, I latched onto Buzz Price, who was, just like he had the math behind everything.
Right. And so he obviously taught you a lot of this. What did he teach you, and how did that, because he invented, we talked about this a few weeks ago, but he invented the business of feasibility for theme parks and the theme park industry. It's
Right.
really an industry standard. How much of that filtered down to you, and how did it? And just talk about that.
Well, we started working with Buzz in that I talked with him because I was, I went and saw him while I was still a student at Cal Arts. We didn't click then, but later we linked up, and we were doing projects together. He would do a little bit of we would provide a little bit of creative, and he would do the feasibility. And so it was a little bit of creative, a little bit of feasibility, and we would work together these things.
This is when you're BRC. This is not Disney Imagineering at this point, or WED. This is when you.
Yeah, we sort of met up at Disney Imagineering, and but we started afterwards as part of BRC. We were, working together doing these, pre-concepts, we called them, and we got to sort of be in the room and watch him work, and watch him do, when he would do one of them, it's like watching a magician perform an act over and over again. You learn more by watching him do it again and again and again. You see the subtle things that seem to be by accident that really are on purpose. I'll give you one silly example. As he used to put it, having the right answer and having the client believe it are 2 completely different things. So he would use all these different tricks to try to get the client to believe in the answer. One of the best ones was what I called the 6x7 technique. Buzz knows what is 6x7. He doesn't need a calculator. He doesn't need assistance. But he would already know the answer to this elaborate equation he's working out. And he would say, well, let's see now if our, daily, if our annual is this and our seasonal factor is so and so, and he's working it all out on either a whiteboard or on an easel, and he'd turn around to the somebody, what's 6 times 7? And he would get the client to get a calculator and do the arithmetic. No, it's 6 times 7, 42 was, okay, 42. So then we take that and now Sunday's probably your biggest day. So what's 20% of that? He knows what's 20. He's got one of those brains that just does it, but he's asking so that the client, at the end, the client did all that arithmetic. The client gets buy-in. You learn these little subtle things about how, by watching what seems to be accidental, that's actually premeditated and part of the plan, all in the service of the client, to help the client believe the results. Anyway, because if the client doesn't believe the results,
it doesn't do you any good. But by extension, you learned everything that, presumably a great deal about the business of themed entertainment design through.
Yeah, you never learn everything. Because for one thing, it's changing. Some of those metrics and whatnot that Buzz used are very simple compared to some of the much more sophisticated things that we have today. But you're always learning. It's always something that's evolving and something that's new.
Yeah.
And that's I'm 72. I still learn new things all the time.
What was your greatest creative mistake? How did you get out of it? And what can we learn from this to make us all better leaders?
When we first started BRC, I was the star of the show. If you looked at an organizational chart, it looked like the spokes of a bicycle wheel. All lines of responsibility went directly from the front line to me, the hub. There was no middle management. There was no delegation of authority. I did everything. To a certain extent, that was necessitated by the fact that we didn't really have a huge budget for huge staff. After a while, though, it became obvious that we would be able to grow and be better and more stable if I would delegate more. It was very, very hard to delegate. If you want to grow and you want to advance, start figuring out how to give away your job. That's good advice for somebody in their 30s. Because if you can delegate, you can give away your job, then you're available for the next thing. If you can't, then you wind up with, oh no, we couldn't possibly promote her. Who would do the job that she's doing now? Anyway, I just much earlier, I wish that I had delegated more, grew people. Today, we enjoy the greatest staff that we've ever had. Just incredible talents. People who are more talented than I am. Hire people smarter than yourself and more clever than yourself. And guide them, but support them, give them what they need in order to succeed, and spend more time with your family. That was probably, if I could go back and do anything different, that's probably the number one thing I'd do.
Fantastic.
And oh, by the way, delegate is great advice, even for the 30-year-old.
Yeah.
That's how you're available. Without delegation, you're not available for the promotion.
Mm-hmm.
But with delegation, you've always got a little extra time to do whatever the boss needs next.
I think at this point, Bob, you've provided such a wealth of wisdom that our students and the next generation desperately needs to hear, and I think is really going to be beneficial for them. I think the only thing is do you have any final nuggets that you think you feel the next generation needs to know And if not, yeah, thank you so much for your time with us today.
No, it'll be different. It'll be different. And be ready for change. Yeah, that's the other thing some people think BRC stands for, is be ready to change.
Mm. That's a really good acronym to have for your company. It could have gone so many ways, but yeah, it means be flexible, and that's really kind of what you're talking about. Is there a question that we forgot to ask you that you feel like we need to hear?
Well, it would be out of order now, but for a young person just out of college, this is an interesting exercise to do. Add up the following. You tell them, pull out a pencil and paper, and you get a calculator ready, because I want you to add up a bunch of numbers. First thing I want you to do is I want you to add up the monthly payment on all of the home mortgages that you personally owe, and first trust deeds and second trust deeds. And then after that, add up all of the property tax, annual property tax that you owe. And then the car payments or car leasing payments of all the payments that you owe, and any alimony that you owe, any child support that you owe, any long-term payoffs for any lawsuits that you lost. So you can see where this is going. And after a little while, you ask them, okay, total all that up. What have you got so far? And they look at you like you're nuts, and they say 0. And you say, okay, in the entire rest of your life, when would there be a better opportunity, a better time to take a wild ass chance on some dream? Answer is never. Right when you first come out, if you're going to do something crazy and wild that might launch a great career, some kind of wild startup, do it while you've got no overhead. Because pretty soon it's like a ship picking up barnacles on their hull. Pretty soon you've got a wife or a husband, and then you've got a kid, and then you've got a couple of car payments, and you've got a house payment, and it kind of goes along. But when you're fresh out, God, that is the greatest feeling in the world. You've got no debt. You can live with your parents. Milk that for as long as you can. Live with your parents so that you can get a career started. For God's sake, your parents won't like hearing this, but that's the great gift to people that are in their early 20s, is that they are right now debt-free and monthly payment-free for the most part. Stay that way. Leverage that. That's your superpower right now.
And time.
And time. Well, yeah, unless you're squandering that by trying to acquire the girlfriend or the boyfriend that becomes the spouse, et cetera, et cetera.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, that's fantastic advice, Bob Rogers. Thank you so much for your time.
And best of luck. Best of luck. It's a great responsibility that all of you have in this kind of endeavor, because you're really trying to nurture those seeds that will become the vending machines.
Right.
That will create our industry in 2050, 2060, and 2070, and be giving out, sage advice in 2070, like the advice that you got today.
Well, thank you, Bob. I appreciate that. And thank you again for your time today.
All the best.